Justin Trudeau apologized for going to the beach on Canada's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which is a very, very important day for the country's Indigenous communities.
Last week, think about the past, but also focus on the future. For this important day, I was in error to choose to travel on that day.
And both his body language and his choice of words reveal a lot about his personality. In fact, this is not the first time he makes an apology, so I'm going to compare different moments to establish a baseline so you can better understand how to tell when an apology is real or fake. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and it would be great if you join us by just liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that bell. Let's get down to it.
Before I take questions from the media, I want to address the issue of last week. Traveling on September 30th was a mistake, and I regret it. Traveling on September 30th was a mistake, and I regret it.
The first thing you notice in this apology, and in fact most of Trudeau's apologies, is that his body language is fairly neutral. He doesn't use his hands much. In this one, he's keeping them clasped and he keeps his head in a neutral angle. Not that high, not that low, and there's not much movement in general. There's a compound head movement at the start where he lowers his head and at the same time lowers his gaze. This could mean that he's ashamed, that he feels uncomfortable apologizing, or maybe he thinks that he shouldn't apologize. We still cannot be certain because it's just the first signal. But the second signal is that very subtle tension in his lips and in his jaw. There's a bit of anger there. Still, we don't know if being angry with his own decision or angry with having to apologize. Also, the first reference to what happened is impersonal. He says the words, "the issue of last week." He doesn't use words such as "my actions" or "my behavior," but he distances himself from what he did. What makes this apology so critical is that for more than a decade, the Indigenous communities of Canadian provinces of Newfoundland and Labrador have been pushing for the Government of Canada to acknowledge the abuse that happened in 5 residential schools. And in 2017, Trudeau himself addressed this.
A deep and moving honor for me to be able to represent all Canadians as we acknowledge the past and move together towards the future.
So this time he was invited for September 30 to attend the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation that is closely related to these matters, and he instead went to the beach. Now, this is in itself a red flag that you claim to have a stance, that you use your words to craft a position on an issue, but your actions say otherwise. And Trudeau has a record of being a politician that apparently wants to engage with all cultures, both inside and outside Canada, and that's why he usually... What the hell is that? I think that's material for another video. But then those contradictions are reflected in this apology.
The first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation was a time for Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people alike to reflect and connect, think about the past, but also focus on the future. Think about the past, but also focus on the future.
Notice that the apology's words sound a lot like his words 4 years before, and there's another subtle lip press at the end. I guess that it's trying to vent emotionally since all his body language is really tense and controlled.
I want to thank Chief Casimir of the Kamloops for the conversation we had over the weekend, in which I apologized for not being there with her and her community for this important day.
Yeah, what he doesn't mention in the apology is that he talked to Chief Casimir over the phone. So what he says sounds like it was a more personal conversation when in fact it wasn't. And I understand that Trudeau is charismatic and he would like to use that charisma whenever he wants, but the problem is with instances like this, at the end of that sentence where there's a slight smile on his face. is so slight that I can't say that it's asymmetrical, so I won't affirm that it's a half smile of contempt. But the problem is that he has been serious up to this point, and then he has this expression, especially when saying that it is an important day. That kind of expressions come out as cynical. That's the kind of signals that people catch and cannot tell exactly why sometimes he doesn't look sincere. Again, there are people that smile when nervous, and this could be the case, but what he should know is that most people are not gonna interpret that smile as nervousness. But then he said the following expression.
I was in error to choose to travel on that day. I was in error to choose to travel on that day.
I found that expression a bit odd. I was in error. I mean, I've never heard it before, but I thought that it could be my limited knowledge of English, as simple as that. But then I searched that expression on Google's Ngram Viewer, that is a useful tool to measure and compare expression and sentences in books over the last 200 years. I compared "I was in error" to the much more common "I made a mistake," and what I found is that in fact, the expression "I was in error" is a really unusual expression, and I have a problem when people try to go for the long or extravagant route when making an apology. It's much better to just say "I made a mistake." If you already said it, you just repeat it. Because if you use non-conventional or too exotic sentences, it will look like you're trying to not be totally accountable or not fully transparent. The language you use for an apology should be as simple as possible. Now, I also searched for other apologies that he made, and it seems that he apologizes a lot. I think I could pick at least 2 different apologies for each year he's been in office. But there is one that caught my attention, and was this one of being accused of eating while being in the House of Commons.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I apologize. It was a chocolate bar, but I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I apologize.
I understand that the House of Commons rules are that you cannot eat or drink anything but water while you're inside. But to be fair with Trudeau, this happened over a marathon voting of 30 hours, so I, for one, would have gone full Ukraine parliament just for the low blood sugar. But in that quick apology, he shows some signals such as a bit of arrogance. He also did that subtle smile and just a bit of anger at the end. So that came out as mocking. But the situation was rather extreme, so I can give him that. But in the apology that we are analyzing in this video, he was pretty calm, so that's why expressions like the one you're about to hear stand out.
I think the how it happened is far less important than that it happened, which I regret. I think the how it happened is far less important than that it happened, which I regret.
He's trying to make the how it happened less important because you can imagine that the how it happened involves that he made a conscious decision of going to the beach on that date and not the day after. I never recommend to try to downplay your responsibility while apologizing because it always backfires. People can tell, even subconsciously, that you're trying to make your faults seem not that important or not that relevant. And that's not for who makes the apology to judge. That actually hurts credibility, and that's why I think this apology just didn't make the cut. I think that's one of the reasons some people don't trust Justin Trudeau. Yeah, literally any politician is going to have detractors, that's a given, but what I think is more important is to try to understand why those people cannot stand watching his apologies or any other statement. It's evident that he is handsome and has charisma and a way of speaking that appeals to many people, but at the same time he shows subtle contradictions that, whether if they're part of his personality or are just plain nervousness, end up undermining his image with not a small percentage of his voters. This is not going to be the last video I make about him, so we'll see how his body language evolves in the future. Don't forget to download my 100 body language tips right in the description of this video. And for quicker updates on body language and related topics, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Take care, my body language buddies.